Congressional Black Caucus Foundation ALC 2018 is taking place in the nation's capital, and that was an amazing panel that took place on Thursday. Our cameras were there. It featured Ben Jealous running for governor of Maryland, Stacey Abrams running for governor of Georgia, Andrew Gillum running for governor of Florida. It was moderated by Angela Rye. Take a look.
Hey everybody! Hello! We need high energy. This is gonna be such an amazing conversation. So I first want to give to you all my good friend. I've known him for 15 years. He started off in public service as a Student Government Association president at Gainesville High School, then went on to become SGA president at Florida A&M University. He's a rattler. There's some rattlers in the building. Went on to become Tallahassee City Commissioner, and now serves as the Tallahassee mayor, and probably will be, I don't say almost likely, I'll say we'll go out and just go ahead and call him Governor Andrew Gillum. Love you. Next up, we have someone who has now become a Time cover girl. She is the face, and I think Andrew kind of rode that wave of what's happening in the South. Stacey Abrams is someone who started with the New Georgia Project, ensuring that our voices would be heard. We'll talk more about that on this panel. Senate Minority Leader in Georgia. And then she went on to start running this campaign, talking to folks all over Georgia about the importance of affordable health care and signing folks up herself. She rolls up her sleeves and works every day tirelessly for us. And just like with Andrew, we can go ahead and say, the next governor of Georgia, ladies and gentlemen, Stacey Abrams.
All right, sis.
That's her job. If you do your job, we'll hurt you.
And certainly not least, but last addition to the panel is someone who we all saw really making change happen. First, as the NAACP president, he has a long resume that's amazing, probably the most unconventional candidate up here because he hasn't served in public service. But how many of us know sometimes that's exactly what we need? Someone to change the face of things. He's running against an incumbent in Maryland, but he's run such a strong campaign, surprised a lot of folks, you all. But he learned a lot working with the NAACP. We know those chapters in our communities do so much for us every day. Ben Jealous was a big part of that. The next governor of Maryland, ladies and gentlemen, Benjamin Todd Jealous. All right, well, let's get started. I want to just start with something really simple, but I think it's an important question. And Ben, I really want to start with you because as I said in your intro, you're the most unconventional candidate. You don't come from, you know, I'm a lifelong politician, no shade. It's good. I'm glad you started at Gainesville High School, Andrew. But why politics? Why politics for you and why now?
You know, when I left the NAACP, having served as their youngest president, my blood pressure was 180. And I didn't realize I had undiagnosed sleep apnea. And I figured it out. My blood pressure now is in the 120s. And the uprisings happened in Baltimore right around that time. And I found myself in the neighborhood where my mom grew up. And I realized that I've been blessed most of my life to do the thing I was best at, which is to pull people together to get big things done. And now that I had my health under control, I needed to get back to it. And so I'm running for governor because it's time for us to finally fully fund our schools, to make sure that we all have health care and we can afford it, and to get our economy going again. And as somebody who spent the last 5 years since I left the NAACP investing in startups, I know that our state has a much more robust future, and I'm eager to see it happen sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Thank you. Stacey? What about you? Why politics? Not why now for you, but why politics? How did you get dragged into this mess?
So I grew up in Mississippi. I like to say I'm Mississippi raised and Georgia grown. In Mississippi, my parents worked full-time and yet barely stayed above the poverty line. My mom liked to call us the genteel poor. We had no money, but we watched PBS and we read books. But my parents would make sure that we spent every Saturday in service. They would take us out to volunteer at soup kitchens and homeless shelters because they would say, look, having nothing is not an excuse for doing nothing. And that ethos has driven me my entire life, in part because I was really frustrated by the fact that my parents and my 5 brothers and sisters and myself, that we were the social action force for Gulfport, Mississippi. I'm like, this is very inefficient. Shouldn't someone else be doing this? And my parents said, that's called government. Government is supposed to do more to provide access, because I personally believe poverty is immoral, it's economically inefficient, and it is solvable. And that has to be how we approach our. And so for me, politics became the only way to deliver on the promise of what good government can do. I started out as an attorney. I was then deputy city attorney for Atlanta. But what I found was that I couldn't make politicians do what I told them to. And so I became one myself. And the more I did that work, the more I realized that the job that can transform the lives of the incarcerated, the lives of the poor, those being pushed out of their communities by gentrification, those who haven't had health care in their lifetime, those who want to start a small business but can't get access to capital, all of those solutions rest in the hands of the governor of the state, and I want to be the person who delivers those solutions for Georgia.
So Andrew, I want to switch gears just a little bit, but on the same question, often when you're out stumping, you talk about pedigree. And you talk about you don't fit the pedigree or the mold, right? We know a lot of, at least the majority, white folks are a little richer when they get into politics, or they have some rich family members. We see that even in the Democratic Party. But you talk about being raised by a father who's a construction worker, a mother who's a school bus driver, and you don't come from the right pedigree. Given that, Andrew, you didn't pick a route where you would make a whole lot of money. You picked politics. Why do that?
I know, right? To be amongst this talented, amazingly talented group of nominees of our respective parties to be governors of our respective states is pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible. In fact, I don't think for a lot of us, this moment and the significance of it will seep in until some time from now. But there were a lot of people who didn't think we deserved to be here. And some of that is our pedigree, and some of it is a little bit of something else. We won't talk about that.
Yes, we will.
Well, maybe we will. Angela is here. Cousin Angela's in the room. But Angela's right. I mean, I grew up in Miami-Dade, was born in Miami. I finished high school in Gainesville, Florida, and then I came to Tallahassee, Florida to attend my version of Hillman College, known as Florida A&M University. And I was one of 5 candidates in the Democratic primary, the only non-millionaire running for the Democratic nomination.
You were the brokest one.
To put it...
The brokest. Tell him how much you spent, Andrew. Tell him how much you spent.
To put it differently, I was the broke one. In the race, we raised and spent about $6 million to the combined spending of my opponents combined of over $90 million. And we ended up winning that race. Don't let anybody tell you. Don't let anybody tell you. Don't let anybody tell you that you got to have the most money. Nope. Or come from a certain background, or attend certain schools, or grow up on the right side of the track in order to be of service to people. You don't. You got to have a heart to care with. You got to have a willingness to make a difference. And you got to have a plan to get something done for somebody other than yourself.
Amen.
And that will take you a great distance. I think what voters saw was that I was willing to engage authentically, that I didn't have much to lose, and therefore I could run as myself. I didn't have to compromise my values. I didn't have to worry about somebody being disappointed because they had no expectations of me to begin with. I just had to be me. And I just got to tell you that there's liberation in that. There's freedom in just being able to be yourself. And I think that made all the difference in the world for us in the primary. And I believe that that will be the ingredients that will get us across the top on November 6th to become the next governor of Florida.
We got a fan right here. Since Andrew said we're not talking about this, we're going to talk about this.
Oh, Lord.
I want us, in our authenticity, to talk about some of the barriers that existed even in the primary, because I think it's important that, Stacey's already laughing.
Yeah, I know what you're about to say.
I think it's important that the party, this blue wave that's supposed to happen, understands this formula. And what I mean by this is you have 3 black gubernatorial candidates who were told they could not win, who were told they didn't have enough money, who were told they didn't come from the right pedigree, who were told their daddies were whomever and so they should be next, who were told that we're gonna run white Stacey over black Stacey, and so on and so forth. And so just for a moment, I know we have to unify, but in order to unify, first you gotta tell the truth. So, to this very black room, I want you all to talk a little bit about what a winning formula looks like, even for statewide office, because as Andrew says it, I think best, it doesn't have to run as Republican light. Yeah, right. So can you talk a little bit about your platforms and even some of the things that the party would have said, don't stand on that. Standing on that means you'll lose, stand your ground. Other things that you all are standing on and will continue to stand on going into the general. Sorry, it was kind of a speech. It's my soapbox question now.
Sure. So I'll start. As Angela pointed out, I did not look like my opponent, although we shared the same first name. And at Netroots Nation, I made a comment in my speech. Look, I didn't have to change my hair, my skin color, or my gender to become the next governor of Georgia. And the importance of that is, look, I have natural hair. Since we're on a podcast, I am of a very rich brown hue.
I'm richer.
Speak.
It's the only thing I'm rich in. It's melanin.
No comment. Let's just go on.
I know. But you know what, Ben? We're still really black on the inside completely.
Black is a state of mind, baby.
All black everything.
I did not mean to go anywhere near this.
I know. What happened? And Stacey, Ben just pulled I have black friends. That is what just happened.
Oh!
What is going on?
No, Angela's been waiting to pull my black cards as I became president.
Put us on the rails.
Let's just be clear.
I have home training, so I'm going to get back to the subject.
I know, my bad.
So, but the reason this matters is that, you know, certainly running as a black woman in the Deep South, running for an office that no black woman has ever held, led a great deal of the traditional Democratic apparatus to assume I could not win. And then I exacerbate it by talking about my brother who is in and out of prison and has bipolar disorder and needs help and needs support from our state. I've talked about the fact that I am broke. I actually make a pretty good living, but I'm responsible for my parents, for my niece who my parents adopted when she was 5 days old, for my grandmother who lives with them, wow. And I owe the IRS $39,480. I paid a lot of it down. But I talk about it because you cannot have a conversation about how we help working families take care of themselves if you don't know what it means to be a working family.
Yes.
And so I talk ad nauseum about Medicaid expansion because one of the reasons I stepped up to take care of my parents, and I have amazing brothers and sisters, I just had the better salary. And we know that when one of us gets a job, we all get a good job. Yeah. And I was able to step up when my parents would have been forced after Hurricane Katrina onto Medicaid. I would not let my parents lose their health insurance. And I've become their primary source of revenue outside of, you know, the jobs that they've had. And my parents are Methodist ministers now, so they're like permanently poor. But my point being that we have to understand, especially in our communities, that our expectations have to be calibrated to having people who know what our lives are like. You cannot solve a problem you don't understand. And while we don't have to have the exact same problems, we have to acknowledge the authenticity of the challenges we face, and you have to have solutions that are actually achievable in order to solve them. But what I think both Ben and Andrew did so spectacularly in their communities and in their campaigns is not only talk about the problem and talk about the solution, but we may not have the pedigrees that they expect, but we have the credentials for solutions that no other candidates like us have ever had.
Yeah.
All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered. He is part 2 of that panel Angela Rye moderated with Andrew Gillum, Ben Jealous, and Stacey Abrams.
So Ben, to you, I would ask the same question. Some of the things that maybe the establishment didn't expect for you to have, some of the challenges you've experienced, some of the challenges you'll face going into the general, or that
the first thing the establishment tried to do is try to actually disown me from my state. And I had to just explain to him, because he's, like, what high school did you go to? I said, well, my mom desegregated Western High School for girls. I tried to give him a clue where I was headed. And then I just had to make it plain. I said, look, I didn't have the opportunity to grow up here because my parents' marriage was against the law and it was illegal for them to return to the state. I was shipped back here every summer because this is where home is and this is where my family is. And when your family's from West Baltimore, the one thing you never do is forget who your family is or where you're from, or what your responsibility is once you've done better, to make sure that everybody does better. And then they started asking questions, they're like, well, tell us about your success. I said, well, look, my mom grew up in the housing projects. I became a Rhodes Scholar. I can't explain how you get from one to the other without the unions that made sure that my grandparents had a good wage, had enough money to pay for me to go to college. And they're like, no, you're not supposed to mention unions if you're running for governor, south of the Mason-Dixon. Well, I've been a union member myself. It also helped me. And so I just said, look, I'm going to run as who I am, and if that's a little more complex than your picture of what a candidate for governor should be, so be it. Because all of us live lives that are way more complex than anybody's caricature. But I'll be clear, I am here to run for office because there's work that's undone that my family's been involved in for 80 years in Baltimore, to make sure that zip code does not determine your destiny. And as long as I have neighbors, as long as I have family members who feel like they're trapped in their zip code, I'll be doing the same work that my grandma did when she was a social worker in Maryland and helped train Barbara Mikulski, and that's serving the people of our state and helping us all find our way to a better place.
And Andrew, there was a point in your campaign where another young black man was shot in Florida, Marquise McLaughlin. And you started hammering hard on the importance of a state of emergency or emergency stay on the Stand Your Ground law and how important it would be for you to repeal it as governor. There are a number, yes. There are a number of folks in the party, people who text message me like, tell your friend, this is the death knell for his campaign. Because you were doing something for us so that your sons could survive in the state of Florida. Talk about why that was more important to you than getting that little nudge of support from the party. Yeah,
and there's a common theme, I think, in all of our stories, which is we didn't run from our stories and our experiences. It informed our public policy. Exactly. Our lived experiences really informed it. And on Stand Your Ground, my position on it didn't change from when I spoke up after the death of Trayvon Martin. We spoke up resoundingly. We said that Stand Your Ground law has no place in civilized society, and we didn't make apologies for it. But when this one came around, and again, I was in a 5-way race, so it was great to have the other field start to speak out on these issues that we've been talking about for so long. It was strength and partnership. This one struck me a little bit differently because when Trayvon Martin happened, even though I myself am a black man, obviously, I didn't have 2 sons at the time. And so it really did hit me a little bit differently. And if you don't know the fact pattern of the case, Marquise McLaughlin was driving home with his partner, Brittany, and their 3 children, 1 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a few-month-old. And as they would do sometimes on their way home, they pulled off into a circle bodega, Circle 8. And Marquise got out of the car with his 5-year-old son. They pulled into a handicap spot. He got out, went inside the store, took his 5-year-old son with him, and left Brittany and the 2 babies in the car. Well, across the street from this Circle 8 is a gun shop. And there's a guy who perpetually kind of hangs out in this space and has a reputation for antagonizing people. So he decides to come over, start banging on the window where Brittany and the kids are seated, circles the car, banging, pushing on the car, cursing at Brittany in front of her children. Someone lets Marquise McLaughlin know what was going on inside. He comes out, sees the man next to his family, threatening them, and he shoves them to the ground. He then takes a few steps back as this man then reaches for a weapon, pulls it out, and in front of his 5-year-old child, his life is snuffed out. I went to the site of this location when I was in the area for a rally. Afterwards, I just wanted to go by and see what was up. And while I was standing there for probably 15 minutes, no less than 2 or 3 cars had come and pulled into this same handicapped spot where the blue paint had been kind of erased away. You could tell that this was a ritual, not necessarily judging right or wrong, that so many times people had probably done before. And that the only difference was that this guy today decided that he was going to pick a fight. And in my state where I live, the law is such that you can go antagonize, push the bear, start a fight, and then hide behind, stand your ground when somebody responds. If anybody had a right to stand their ground that day, it was Marquise McLaughlin, Brittany, and those 3 children. But the law was such that there was no penalty to be paid for that. Until we began to raise our voices in March and we stood up, and even for a short while we sat in, and the state attorney, because the sheriff said because of stand your ground he could not make an arrest, the state attorney intervened and said, I'm going to bring charges in this case. Could you imagine just for a moment the shoes had been reversed? That the man going around the corner and around the car banging on the window and yelling and screaming at a white woman in the car with 2 white children, and the husband comes out and shoves him to the ground. The black man pulls a gun and takes a shot. I'm not trying to be sensational about this. I just want to speak the truth. I just want to speak the truth. We all know that race still matters in this society, and the challenge that we have, frankly, as 3 black candidates running in majority states that are not majority black, certainly in our cases, is that we have to figure out a way to communicate these things in such a way that even the majority white population can have some empathy for it. That they can understand, because I don't believe all white people are racist. I certainly don't believe the majority of the people in my state are racist. I just believe that we all have a set of certain experiences that color our perspectives. And that it's important for people of courage to be able to speak up when these moments present themselves, even at the risk of sometimes not being able to politically prevail or politically win, but to speak up because it's the right thing to do. I did it because it was the right thing to do.
Which is an exception these days too. You all are exceptional candidates in lots of ways. Since you talked about race, and not all white people are racist, facts, but y'all's opponents, except for Ben, I think maybe, they had a little problem with race. There have been some ads that have come out. Andrew, I was ready to fight, like shadow box the air, for real. Like, if you all haven't heard it, you should listen to it. In Idaho, KKK or whatever funded a robocall, making him sound crazy. Like, we might even play it in the podcast, but it's like, my name's Andrew Gillum. It sounded a hot mess. And you want to laugh to keep from crying. Like, it's that ridiculous. Stacey, race has been, a focal point of your, the race against your opponent too. But the race has been injected into your races Andrew, the first day the candidate says, tell Florida not to monkey this up. And they're like, people always say that. No, fool, they say monkey around, right? And they're like, wrong preposition. No, wrong everything, Ron DeSantis. But I think for a moment, I think it's really, really important for people to understand the distinction. Stacey, for you in particular, I want to start with you, Andrew, because you just finished. The race is neck and neck.
Yes.
And so we can say that, like, all white people aren't racist and everybody in Georgia is not racist, but the only thing that can explain why you're neck and neck with a bigot is racism and white privilege. You don't have to say those words. I said that. But let's let Stacey answer this part. Because I think it's important. Like, we're not going to ever get to move forward as a country from racism and the vestiges of slavery until we really take this head on.
So, here's how I think about it. Race is a marker. We use it to tell ourselves stories about who we are and the people we're around. Mm-hmm. We do the same with gender, and when race and gender are intersected, the stories become even more complicated on both sides of the gender conversation. I do not assume that every aspersion cast on me by my opponent is based in race. But I know that when you have a tap dancing icon in the commercial against me, that you could have picked a ballerina, you could have picked somebody doing merengue, you picked a tap dancer. And there was something implicit in what was done that either calls to what you think or calls to something you haven't examined. And part of the challenge with the conversation of race is that it imputes, as Andrew just eloquently laid out, it is imputed into so many other decisions that we make. We have conversations about race when we never use the words. And when we have policies that aren't grounded, so an example for me is, one of the things I'm pushing is for a $10 million small business financing fund. Georgia has a lot of laws on the books that allow for minority contracting, and yet 1% of the contracts go to minority firms in a lot of different ways. You have to kind of take Atlanta out of the picture. Part of the challenge there is that a lot of these minority firms can't get the contract because they can't get any capital. Well, in the Great Recession, Georgia lost more banks than any other state in the nation. The majority of those banks were community banks in low income or communities of color. And so when those banks disappeared, they didn't come back post-recession, which means that, yes, you can qualify for an SBA loan, but if no one will write you the check, it's worth nothing. My opponent has said, well, you don't need a small business financing fund because it's not going to solve the problem, and even if it would solve the problem, you've got banks that will do that. No, not every community has a bank that will do that. And race is implicit in the conversation because if you live in the wrong zip code without a bank, your business will remain a dream because you will never get the capital you need to get it off the ground. And we know there's a direct correlation between Main Street businesses, those small businesses, not the high-tech ones, but the mechanic and the barber shop and the cafe. And if they can borrow the money to buy the shop or to buy that extra piece of equipment or to lease that next piece of land, we know that when small businesses succeed, communities succeed. And when small businesses struggle, communities struggle. If you don't understand that there's a racial element to banking in America in 2018, how can you solve the challenge of the lack of access to jobs for so many of our communities? Race is embedded in how we have to think about these things. It is not the only dimension, but it is a critical dimension that we have to confront and acknowledge because otherwise we cannot solve these problems.
You know, part of, you know, the challenge that all of us have to face in this is we have to talk about this conversation and at the same time try to hold our people so that we can win these elections, because ultimately the goal here is to ensure that we can address the problems that you've heard discussed on this dais. And it just reminds me of the role that each of us have to play in this conversation. I will never dismiss the role that race plays in society. I live it every single day, and in politics it feels like it's on steroids, that you live it every single day out loud, but it's a line you can't cross in calling it out, because then you've called the race card, or you've pandered in some way, or you're trying to send some secret signal to somebody. Well, so far in my race, it seems my opponent and all of his friends are the only ones trying to send secret signals, but they're not so secret. They're actually pretty monkey it up, and you know, neo-Nazi phone calls and A Republican committee woman down in Orlando sent out an email saying, or a Facebook post, whatever, Gillum is quoted as saying he's going to win so that he could have reparations for his people. I've never said, I've been elected 15 years, I've never said anything, not even resembling something like that. But this is what I know for sure, and this is why we have to be careful not to, certainly for those of us who are candidates, kind of fall into the trap. My grandmother used to put it this way, never, ever, ever wrestle with pigs because you both get dirty, but the pig likes it. So there are, some of y'all will get that tomorrow, right? And for the press covering it, I'm not calling my opponent a pig. I'm simply, using a figure of speech to say that when we go down into that barrel, if they're able to make our races, no pun intended, but about race, that's one we can't win. We don't have the numbers.
Well, and that's the goal. I mean, the RGA is attacking all of us, and their ads against me. A very distinguished old law professor just felt moved to write a letter to the Baltimore Sun describing as blatantly racist. And their goal is to get us to go low when they go low. But we have to go high. And the reason we have to go high is because that's the way that you lead people out of where they're stuck right now. You travel, our state's really like 4 states. We got Western Maryland, we got the Eastern Shore, we got the Baltimore region, we have the DC suburbs of the state. And when you listen to families of all colors, of every faith in each of those regions, 80–85% of their issues are the same. And we just have to understand that race is used as a tool to divide us. My grandma's family's been in this region for like almost 400 years. She descends from Thomas Jefferson's grandmother's other grandchildren that were her slaves. And she would always remind me, she'd say, baby, before there were slave rebellions, there were colonial rebellions, and there were African slaves and Irish indentured servants rebelling together. And the first was in Gloucester, Virginia, and what sparked it was an edict from the king to the governor, the people on that dock where they rebelled, that said, in summary, and your status shall convey to your children. In other words, from the very beginning of the American experiment, we at the bottom of the pyramid of our economy were always willing to endure a lot so long as we could hope that our children might be better off. And the moment that they informed us that our children would be no better off and possibly worse, the tradition was we would rebel. And we would rebel together. Those lines of race didn't matter so much on that dock. And they don't matter so much to the people of this region now. But you got to be clear that there's a way for us to all come together and do better. And that's what our campaigns are all about.